our friends are coming in. Hello, everyone. Hello. Give it a second to fill in here. Excellent. Oh, some good friends joining us tonight. Okay. Well, let's get started. So welcome, everyone. My name is Catherine Hecht, and I am the Executive Director of the Alexander Valley Film Society. Welcome to our Cinema Arts and Lecture Series. We're thrilled to have one of our favorite people on the planet, Janice Engel, back with us. Janice was with us at the 2019 Film Festival with Molly Ivins. And Janice is an educator, a filmmaker, maybe a little bit of a savant, an East Coaster, a West Coaster, and an all-around great person. So we're happy to have her. And before we get started, I'm going to start with I'll read our land acknowledgement. So the Alexander Valley Film Society recognizes that we are on unceded lands of the Coast Miwok, Pomo, and Wapo. We respectfully acknowledge the Indigenous people who have lived here for thousands of years and who continue to contribute in meaningful ways to their communities and our society as a whole. Our shared history includes the genocide, forced removal, and ethnic cleansing of Indigenous people. AVFS is committed to centering Indigenous voices and stories to recognize the past and celebrate the resiliency of Native people and their culture. Our deepest thanks go to Nikki Myers-Lim and Clint McKay for their assistance in this agreement, or in this acknowledgement, I should say. And then one more note of housekeeping, just so you know, we are recording and we'll have the recording available afterward. And our Cinema Arts and Lecture Series is free. It's free because we have amazing donors and sponsors who fund our work and help us bring in special guests like Janice to educate our community and strengthen our community using film. So if you are so inclined, please go to our website and make a suggested donation of $10 or more if you're moved. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Janice. Janice, I'm so excited you're here, and I'm going to stop talking because I want you to take it away.
Thank you, Catherine, for having me. And how y'all doing? You know, you guys can, I can see your faces. So I'm not just talking, it's speaking to your names. I see all your names in a grid, but it'd be great if I could see who's in the room, just like a classroom.
Yeah, so everybody go ahead and turn on your cameras if you're so inclined. Hey, Joe.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, welcome back.
I love that because I get energy from seeing you guys. It really is much more, it's like when I teach, you know, in this day and age of the virtual world, and since COVID, you know, I've been teaching, I live in LA, but I teach in San Francisco. So I really, and I hate teaching online because that's just all writing, and I like virtual. If I'm going to do it on site, I can see people's faces. So thank you, those of you who turned on your cameras. I understand some people don't want to be on camera, and I get that. All right, well, welcome. And I think we called, what did we call this? We called this Why Make Documentaries? And I said blurring the lines because at that time, that's one of my themes, blurring the lines, because, well, you know, documentaries these days they blur lines. They blur lines. Documentaries are hybrid animals, and they're getting more and more so. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But, you know, I'm curious, it's kind of interesting, you know, why make documentaries? You know, why, what is it? You know, I always ask myself, you know, why do you, you know, why would you really want to delve into somebody else's life or something or a subject? What is it? What is it that sparks? I always ask my students this. What is it that, there are three things when you make films, the three P's. You have to have patience, perseverance, but number one is you have to have passion. How passionate are you? How passionate are you? And then that's a key ingredient, but really, why do you want to tell stories? I mean, filmmakers are storytellers, and documentary filmmakers are storytellers of the truth. So what is it that sparks us? What is it? What do you guys think it is? And of course, this isn't a class and you can't answer me back. I mean, I always do them with my students and they all start going like saying things, but it's really curiosity.
You feel compelled to, you feel compelled to. Yeah. And you're curious and but you feel compelled to share a story because it needs to be told. Needs to be heard.
Exactly. Yeah, you can speak to me. I love it. Yeah. I'm used to teaching, so I like that. I like the back and forth. So how curious are you? How curious?
Very.
How curious is everybody? Think about it. Think about when you are in your neighborhoods and you go down the street every morning. Let's say you walk your dog in where you live. And there's somebody that you see all the time. And do you just kind of pass them by? You don't know nothing about them, but do you notice they do maybe some routine or something the same way? And haven't you ever found yourself saying, well, like, who is that person? Why are they doing that? Or let's say you ride the bus. And of course, back in the day when we were able to ride buses or do whatever, or depending on where you live, but you pass certain people or you see certain things. Do you ever wonder, what are they doing? What do they do? Or everybody's got their headphones on. What are they listening to? I asked that of a student. She said, I always wonder when I'm riding in San Francisco. She said, I'm riding on the bar or the bus. And she said, I see everybody's got their headphones. And she said, I've always been curious, like, what if some of them are aliens and somebody else is talking to them? And I mean, so then there it is. It's the curiosity. So what sparks us to want to tell stories? What is it about the world around us that makes us want to capture it, preserve it, reflect upon it, and cherish it before it vanishes? Is it the idea of bearing witness to the human condition in all its myriad forms in a fashion that says, we are here, we existed, and it's in the record? Is it a record of our existence? What is it? What is it that, and this has been, I mean, think about cave paintings. What are cave paintings? It's a record. We existed. We put our footprint on the planet. So in documentaries, is it to educate, future generations so as not to make the mistakes we made? Is it to record historical events so that a visual and oral record exists that says this actually happened? Is it to celebrate the human condition from birth to death? Is it to discover the unknown, be it deep in the oceans, outwards in space, or in the infinitesimal universe of our own bodies? Is it to reinterpret history or speculate upon the future? So, all of these questions that I've just ripped through fuels great storytelling and great documentary filmmaking. Look around you in everyday life. What sparks your attention, stirs up memories, moves you to action, and motivates you to dig into the world around you and want to explore it, learn about it, and share it? The most important thing is share it. This is where you come up with ideas. This is where you begin to make films, make stories, have whatever form you want to do. I make documentaries. I fell backwards into documentaries, which I'll get to in a little bit. But I've always been very, very curious. I just, I want to know. So, then, this is kind of a lecture I give my students on the first day of class that we have. So I'm giving it to you guys because I think it's interesting and it always sparks a lot of things. But, because people have these preconceived ideas about what documentaries are. They really do. Now we are in the golden age of documentaries. So it's kind of like it's been burst open, but, I'm of an age where you think about what were documentaries. I went to film school. I didn't even start out wanting to make documentaries, because back when I went to USC film, and now it's called this University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts. But when I went, it was the cinema department. And we were the poor bastard cousins of the performing arts department. We did not have all the money from first Lucas and then Spielberg. We were, I think Traveler the Horse, which came out during halftime at football games, had a higher budget than we had in the cinema department. And back then there was no really like there are now documentary tracks and serious documentary departments in a lot of schools and courses and this and that, it was called ethnographic films. That did not sound very sexy. And I wasn't that interested in it. But anyway, I will get to how I fell backwards into it after we do this little bit about why make documentaries. So what words come to mind when you think of documentary films? You guys can unmute and participate. What words come to mind when you think about documentary films? See, you're a little lost.
Education, awareness.
What else?
Influence.
Mm-hmm.
Truth, passion.
Okay. Here's a few more. Educational, you said that. Ethnographic, I said that. Historical, industrial, natural, scientific, political, social, and travelogues are a few that jump out, right? Somebody said informative, like a biography. Yep. Right. So that's a serious lineup, no doubt, meant to educate, but perhaps not to entertain. But who said documentaries can't be entertaining? I mean, this day and age, they're very entertaining. Think about it. I made a documentary that's extremely entertaining. Raise Hell, the Life and Times of Molly Ivins. How many documentaries make you laugh? And people will say, not very many, but mine did. Mine makes you laugh. You know, a lot of documentaries will make you cry. How many documentaries, this day and age, I mean, Summer of Soul, it's out right now. Amazing, if you haven't seen it. A record that was in a basement for 50 years. It's streaming on Hulu. It's spectacular. How many of you saw Time? That was one of the nominations. Worth seeing. Brilliant. Their documentaries, I mean, there are so many. I mean, my octopus teacher that took us down in this man's relationship. It won the Oscar. Personally, I wanted something else to win. I thought Crip Camp and Time were amazing for different reasons. But everybody, doesn't matter. Documentaries, are entertaining. They are. Think about it. What about entertainment? You have movies like Avatar entertain us, right? All the Marvel comics, all that. I'm not a big visual effects person, superhero thing, but they're good. They tell us a good story and they do well at the box office. Documentaries aren't movies. It is argued that they are high-minded educational films with a lesson or a message to impart. And how many of you have seen Stacy Peralta's Riding Giants? About surfing. Thrilling. Step Into Liquid, about surfing. And then he also did Dogtown and Z-Boys, about skateboarding. What about Philippe Petit's Man on a Wire?
Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like the best, like a crime thriller.
Yeah. Well, the
right?
staircase was, but that was amazing.
Right?
Man on a Wire, yeah.
Super exciting, right? So, a lot of people expect us, to documentaries to be one thing, and there's so much more, and they are incredibly entertaining. I like to say documentaries, why I want to make them is it's about real life, real stories, real people.
That's my business saying, real life, real people, real stories. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny, Rebecca. That was on my website for years. When people would go to me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Real life stories, people.
My company in Australia is called Real Films, like real people, real life films. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, it is.
It is.
Yes. So anyway, and then now I just want to kind of just jump to, telling stories and just what motivates us to tell stories. So how do we find ideas? How do you find ideas for stories? I said, how curious are you? You look around, you see something, you start to investigate. If you want to make documentaries, you can. These are fantastic. If you have an iPhone 11, it's cinematic. You can just turn it on. You can hook up a little mic. You can go around. You can make a doc. You can make, my students made the end of 15th week, I had them vlog and they made little micro docs, you know, you can, it's like, how do you find ideas? How do things erupt? Where do ideas come from? How do you observe people, places, situations in your everyday life? So I bring that back up again. Have you ever wondered about people you see every day? As I said, on your way to work, or the people who ride the same bus line day in and day out after hours. Who are they? What must their lives be like? Ideas are all around us. All you have to do is just look, be curious, and investigate. But I always, and this is something I have done for years. I do it with music. I do a lecture called Music is the Soundtrack to Your Life. And ideas are something that, when they spring up, I've woken up in the middle of the night. I always have a pen. I have to write stuff down. Keep a database. I mean, I curate music. Why? Okay, because music really, not that I listen to music all the time, but music brings images for me. It's a visual element. I find it very much about filmmaking. So I was driving in a lift back from the airport from teaching in San Francisco, and I was making Raise Hell, the Life and Times of Molly Ivins, which I'm going to get into that shortly. Took me 7 years to make. The average is 6.5. The average for a documentary is 7 years. Somebody said 7 to 10. I feel like, wow, we came in just under 6.5. And I had been I've been collecting music. For all my projects, I hear something, I throw it in my iTunes. Before that, I used to put it on the iPod, and before that, I CDs, whatever. But I always collected music because I use it as scratch for making films. I will, I'll be editing something because I'm a filmmaker who edits, and I will throw it in as a base. It'll become a scratch track. And then obviously, if I have no budget, I can't afford to buy that to license it. Then I will get a friend who's back in the day when I was making films for nothing, I would get a friend to compose it, to kind of rip it off, but not really, because it had the same feeling. So I'm happy to say that in Raise Hell, the Life and Times of Molly Ivins, we have 10 needle drops. I've always loved, and many people love it, Booker T and the MG's Green Onions. I mean, that is the soundtrack to your life. You hear Green Onions, it's in a movie, you hear Green Onions, you buy in because you go back to that memory of when you first heard that song. And so you automatically hook into the film that you're watching, just an automatic buy-in. But I can't afford Green Onions. I could afford one Booker T song that's in the film. But I then had a composer, and my composer is Ethan Grushka, who is brilliant. And he basically took the framework of what that was and made his own version, but it's not Green Onions, but it was for the part of where Molly went to work at the Texas Observer in 1970. And it just had that same soul drive, very hip kind of, taking it on. And it's great. So I curate music, and the same way I curate ideas. I have ideas. I have a folder. I read the New Yorker. I've been reading the New Yorker for 15, 20 years steadily. I've been going to graduate school by reading the New Yorker. I find articles, I rip them out, I put them in a folder. I may never go back to them, or I might, or I'll find something. When I was, so back to just the idea of the music and ideas, I'm in this lift and I hear this incredible song on the lift driver is playing, and I'm saying, wow. As he drops me off, I said, wait, what was that? What was that song? And he goes, my son is a composer and he sends me this. And I said, what is it? And I had never heard of him, Ludovico Einaudi. I had never heard of Einaudi at that point. Ludovico Einaudi, a tune called Night. And I said, it was so strong. I came here, I downloaded it, and I ended up using it as a scratch track for a part of the film in Raise Hell, the Life and Times of Molly Ivins. Of course, we can't license Einaudis music, it's too expensive, but it's the feeling. So it's the same thing. Curating as filmmakers, as storytellers, how curious are you? Looking at the world around you, it's all around you, to start collecting. Stories have been told. There's something like 7 themes. Everybody is a retelling of the same story, but everybody has a different way of looking and perceiving. And the same thing is with, classic storytelling is with documentaries. So a lot of times I will, and I give this to my students, and I'm saying, since I'm teaching a masterclass, create a database of ideas. Keep a journal or a notebook where you can write down thoughts, observations, snatches of conversations you overhear, or mini profiles on interesting characters or situations that happen out of the blue, or even, on a regular basis. Write it down and leave it. Then come back and reread it. Sift through it. That's why I call this sifting for ideas. Sift through it. See what themes and associations draw you in. Pretty soon, certain themes or preoccupations will become apparent. Make a routine, and before you know it, you'll have a database of ideas from which to draw upon. These initial seeds will become a repository of observations that you might expand into stories that you want to tell and documentaries you want to make. So that's kind of just my little intro of, I'm a curious person. So that's I've always been curious. I was always the kid who would always say, yeah, but I have one more question. So does anybody have Oh, it started again. So people always ask me, they always ask me this, how did this come about? And what motivated me to make Raise Hell, The Life and Times of Molly Ivins was nothing had been done, except for a play. And my producing partner, James Egan, and I had wanted to make a film for a long time. He became my producing partner for Raise Hell. He had wanted to make a film with me, and he, in, I want to say May of 2012, called me up and said, we both live in LA. He said, you need to go to see a play, a one-woman show. It's at the Geffen Theater. I know the playwrights, it's their first play, and it's called Red Hot Patriot, The Kick-Ass Wit of Molly Ivins. And I said, why? And he said, because I had to last week. Of course, I giggled, and then he dangled the carrot, and he said, it stars Kathleen Turner, and it's closing this week. And I said, okay, that was the carrot. And I went. I bought a ticket. I went, and I really didn't know who Molly Ivins was. I had heard her name. I think I'd seen her on a late night talk show. I knew she had dubbed George W. Bush Shrub, the Little Bush, but that was all I knew. I wasn't in her constituency, nor was James. So I went to the play and I laughed my ass off. I had never seen, it was like a laugh a minute. She was hilarious. And Kathleen was great, but it was Molly. It was the material. And they had some clips of her and this and that, and voice and this and that. And I came home and I Googled her till 2 or 3 in the morning. And I called up James in the morning and I said, what? I said, I'm blown away. He said, nothing's been done. I said, nothing's been done. He said, nope, just the play. And so that's what started us on this road. And I said, and then he's telling me he didn't know who she was. He was from Baltimore. I was from New York originally, LA, and she wasn't in our purview. I wasn't part of her 400 newspapers. And New York and Los Angeles, sometimes Molly would have things in the LA Times, but so I really didn't, I wasn't in that circle, but many people were. And she, at the height of her powers, was in over 400 newspapers. So again, curiosity. I went down that wormhole from that night that I Googled till 2 or 3 in the morning. I started Googling and I started finding, and I started doing my deep dive wormhole.
So good to hear that someone does that too, like the Google.
Oh, well,
do,
before we had this thing I'm talking to you on, you used to have to go to a library and spend months and of course years. I still took months and years, but I mean, imagine that you have the research tool is huge.
It's amazing.
You can even access archives. I mean, I lived at the Briscoe Center for American Studies at the University of Texas in Austin for months at a time over the course of 6.5 years. Molly's papers are there. I lived and breathed, and they would send me stuff, but I would also go there for 2 months at a time and stay with Molly's friends. And so anyway, it
grabs you, doesn't it? And you
keep going. Exactly. So anyway, like I said, 6.5 years, 7 years, a labor of love. Patience, perseverance, and of course, passion. It was an amazing feat. And the thing about Molly is that, and this is about when you make films, you know, when you any creative project, each creative project, whether you're a painter, whether you're a writer, whether you're a filmmaker, a dancer, an actor, every project has its own life breath. You breathe life into it, but it has its own path. And you cannot force creativity. And you have to allow it to breathe on its own. So that means you have to get out of your own way. Everyone here, I'm telling you, you have to get, I mean,
it's gold. That's gold. I love that. Yeah.
Every time we wanted, we said we wanted to push. We did a very successful Kickstarter campaign. That's a whole story in itself. We did a very successful Kickstarter campaign for a documentary. We raised $126,000. We blew past our goal of $75,000. We blew past our goal in the first 10 days with $75,000 because Molly had a constituency and we tapped it. That's when you do a Kickstarter. You have to go, who's your target audience? Yeah. So you have to tap in to that target audience and then you push it in that direction. But you also have to build up this whole social media, this realm. Documentaries do much better on social media. I mean, on crowdfunding than narratives because they're theme motivated, they're subject motivated. They have a call to action usually. Molly had a constituency and we tapped into her constituency. But that said, you have to, with your own projects, you have to get out of your own way. So every time we would try to push to say, okay, we have to have it ready for this, we could never fund the money. Every time we have our other producing partner, James and I Carlisle, our Texas producing partner, calls us carpetbaggers. We could not go to people in Texas and ask them for money because we're carpetbaggers. We brought on my best friend and James's. We've known each other all for over 30 years. We had met in an ashram, a meditation ashram years ago. And we brought in Carlisle, and Carlisle grew up in the same town, Tony Town of River Oaks in Houston, that Molly grew up and went to the same private school. And knew came up the same way and was a child of oil and gas privilege and fought her own, battles. And so she was the perfect person. She had been in the film and then had left it and was a sacred beekeeper and was making art. And I pulled her back in and just James. And, but every time we would think we could go ask for money, it was Wendy Davis's campaign. It was Beto. It was everybody else's campaign and nobody had money. It was so hard. So every time we would try to push for what we wanted, and I soon learned to get out of the way that Molly's driving this bus. And as soon as I relaxed and allowed, everything falls into place. So we found out that we got into, and this is with all your creative projects. It has its own birth. So we found out we got into Sundance literally, and we got in on a rough cut going to a fine cut. And I write to the end. it's her, it's who she's driving this bus. I'm just blessed to be on her ride. I'm blessed to have been given, a chance to bring her back. And it's timing is everything. And we found out, we got into Sundance a week after the 2018 midterm elections, when the United States had elected 101 freshman congresswomen, a first. And Molly would have loved that. Now, again, who's driving this bus? And that whole thing, getting to Sundance and then South by Southwest, and we won audience awards, and then we got picked up by Magnolia Pictures, and then we found out that I came to the Alexander Valley Film Festival. We found out that our release date was August 30th, 2019. And this is in like mid-July, and we'd signed Magnolia Pictures, which, as an independent documentary filmmaker, that's where you want it to be. We found that, I'm looking at that date and I said, why is that? So, I know everything about Molly's life. I'm looking at it and all of a sudden it's like, boom, the light bulb goes on. It's Molly's birthday. And that August 30th, 2019 was her 75th birthday. I mean, who's driving this bus?
75 grand was your first budget, hit that. Yeah.
Come on, it was, and I live in LA, Voodoo Binky, Wooji, we're in California, but yes, there is
magic, isn't it? How do you explain it?
It's got its own life force. Yeah. I got out of the way. My producing partners got out of the way and allowed it to breathe. Every project has its own life force. So that's a big deal.
That is.
Yeah. And I say that with everybody. As creative people or, whatever. I mean, you plant a seed.
Yeah.
Right? You water it, but it's going to grow on its own. So anyway, so that's kind of what happened with that. So documentaries. Why did I make documentaries? Well, like Molly, I fell backwards into journal. She said in the film, I fell backwards into journalism. I fell backwards into film school. I was originally accepted into, so that's why I say, I believe that there's alchemy involved. I was originally accepted into the School of Journalism. I don't want to be a journalist. Here I am, I'm making documentaries, come on. I'm making stories about real life, real stories, real people. Duh, that's a form of journalism with filmmaking. But, I grew up at a time, I grew up in the devouring films. My father turned me on to movies. I'm not going to get into that, but I just, as a little girl, but I came out of USC film school at a time where there really was no true opportunities for women filmmakers. It was really hard. I came out, I was 21. I looked like I was 16. I had made a film with a punk band, not a punk, at the time they were kind of punky new wave, but
so cool. That's cool.
There was, nobody was going to give me, so I did it on my own, and I was always trying to tell real stories. There was a thing called the Los Angeles Street Scene Festival, and it was downtown LA, and I had a friend who had a big video camera back then. And I would, like a producer, I would get people involved, and we would all go down and we shoot all the footage. That's documentary filmmaking. And even when I was in film school, we got the first porta packs. I made films. I cut Super 8. I cut on a moviola. We got the first porta packs video with a heavy thing. And me and my film partner were the first ones to check them out. And we went down and interviewed prostitutes down on Las Palmas Avenue at 2 a.m. in the morning. And then down in, there was a soul food restaurant called Southtown, and then became Murray's. It's long gone, down on Wilcox between Selma and Sunset Boulevard. And I would go in there and we pushed me, and it was always towards real life. So real life, real stories, real people, because I was always blown away by what people would tell me. And here's the other reason. People let you into their lives. It's very humbling.
Oh, it is. It's a privilege.
It's very, even when I have made films with people I could, at first I fell in love with and I came to hate, but the people, it's humbling privilege. People are letting you in, they're trusting you. And I always park my opinions. I made a film called Road to Miss America. For Discovery Channel. Back in the day when Discovery Channel was still doing nature and science, and it wasn't the station of, reality TV and manly men doing manly things in manly ways.
I had 2 tours of Discovery, and that's one of the reasons why I left. Yes, ma'am. I took that job for the same reason, and I left for that same reason. So bless you.
Back when it was starting, they were we were doing one-offs, and they were doing, it was kind of the Wild West. There was no reality TV. It was all little docu-series and real life, real stories, real people. And I'm very into subcultures. And one of the first ones I did was, believe it or not, for Discovery Channel, was The Road to Miss America. And I would basically get paid a salary, and I always just paid my rent and my bills, and I never, it's like I was crazy filmmakers. And I edited. That was the last thing I directed, edited, wrote, and produced. I did edit Molly for 5.5 years and produced and directed it, but I did bring in my co-pilot goddess Monique Zavostovsky to do the last 8 months in the film that became Molly. But a lot of what I had worked out. I mean, I climbed the mountain, sifted through the mountains. I had a 7.5 hour select reel of just Molly Ivins. Yeah. So, I did Road to Miss America, and, I had my opinions about these executive, and we followed 2 girls, one from, I think, Covina. And I realized they give scholarships, and, I had all my opinions about, oh my God, I'm a snotty New Yorker. I have all my opinions about, the Miss America contest and people who would do this, and like that it's these teams, and, the wives are really into it, because it's like, it's all this perfect, like, it's this old 1950s kind of view of women, and the guys are kind of lechers, their husbands. And I just had this kind of, that it was, gratuitous, and, anyway, and parts of it were, but, when I got into it and I got to know the people, and I would park that attitude at the door, like, leave your ego at the door. People are letting you into their lives, and show up, shut up, and be open. And I actually, I had stereotyped opinions, just like people would have stereotyped opinions about me because I'm a New York Jew. It's bullshit. I mean, it's just the surface. And when you make documentaries, you peel the onion. People let you in, you start to peel. The more you go back to them and they reveal more and they feel safer, they're letting you in. And that is humbling privilege and experience. And you must have respect, even if you don't like them, and if you really don't like them, then don't do. I mean, I've knocked on, I tried to get 3 for Molly. I tried to get Shrub. I tried to get George W. Bush. He was in his painting phase. He wasn't, we tried so many different ways. I tried to get Governor Goodhair, Rick Perry. At the end of the day, we even tried to get Bill O'Reilly, who loved Molly. See, Molly was equal opportunity. She went after everyone and anyone. So it gives you a perspective into the world around, that everything, things are percolating, under the surface. People reveal things when they feel safe. And I'm curious, and, it basically set me on my path, making documentaries. I also needed to find work so I could pay, my rent and bills. But, I went from I got out of school, and I went from doing, it was the early days, MTV was just starting. So I'd made tons of music videos, which I directed, edited, and then edited. And then I started doing music documentaries. And then I basically got into regular documentaries. So, and then I became a showrunner. So I'm going to show you, I think it's a good time to take a little bit of a break from talking. I'm going to show you a couple of things that I did. I have a couple of clips. I always like to tell, so for Discovery Channel, I did a lot of stories about outsiders and subcultures. I did bodybuilders. I did tattoo wars. I did biker chicks. The biker chicks, I took 3 girls from New York, 3 girls from California, hooked them up in Durango, Colorado, and we took them on a road trip to San Francisco for a power ride and Devil Dolls motorcycle gang, and to meet up with the Devil Dolls motorcycle gang. And I wanted to call it Dangerous Curves, which I thought was a great title. The network always, so I did a lot, I became a showrunner. They always ask you to give them a whole list of possible titles. So I came up with like, I don't know, 15 titles. And at the end, I put the ones that I wanted to call it Biker Chicks, Biker Babes, Dangerous Curves. I had a bunch of them. The girls wanted to call it Tits, Tolls, and Tampax. That wasn't going to fly. And at the end, I always put the throwaways. And at the end, I put Motorcycle Women. You know that Discovery Channel, the gal, Rebecca, Discovery Channel picked Motorcycle Women because they wanted you to be able to read it in the TV guide. It's the most unimaginative title, but I've had that come up so many times. Anyway, I'm going to show you a couple of cold opens from some of the things I did it was for a series called On the Inside. And they basically gave me money and allowed me to produce, I produced, directed, edited, wrote, whatever. And they were these 1-hour documentaries. And I jumped right in and did a bunch of subcultures. So I'm going to show you a few of those, and then we'll meet up again. So I'm going to share the screen. Let me find my first one. Where are you? Oh, here we go. Here it is. First one is bodybuilders. Oh my God. I got Joe Weider in it. Arnold Schwarzenegger gave me footage that had only been seen in Australia. But this is just the cold open. And I tracked 2 guys, one an amateur and one who was moving into the pros. Both were not using steroids. Everybody admitted that was amazing that they Joe Weider talked about it as the use of steroids and other substances. And I tracked 2 guys and women as they were basically going just in their trajectory. So here is the cold open. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay. Oh, it's not working. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Oh, 01. It's a long time ago.
Bodybuilding is not just a sport. It is a way to live one's life, to reach for that moment of perfect symmetry and dimension. Welcome to the cult of the body.
Bodybuilding is a tremendous thing when you realize that you have a hand, you have the power to create your body the way you want it.
Today on stage, you have to be as big as you can be, as muscular as you can be, as ripped you can be, and as freaky as you can be.
I think that we are a little bit obsessed.
Bodybuilding is not body destruction.
If anyone thinks that there's no drugs in all sports, they're living in a vacuum.
I am 100% drug-free.
Bodybuilding gives you power, gives you energy.
I really respect these guys that go out there and do it naturally because they've really got to pay attention to their diet and their supplements.
I'll pick poses that are going to make me look bigger than I really am. Because that's what this sport is all about, the sport of illusions.
I don't want to sound cocky or anything, but I'm going to go out there expecting a win.
Okay, that's that cold open. I'll show you. It is the cult of the body. Now I'm going to show you Tattoo Wars, which is another subculture. I mean, I feel like I was so lucky to get to make all of these things. It's pretty amazing. And I had free reign. I mean, my notes, the executives I worked with were fabulous, mostly, and they loved what I did. And I actually shot a lot of that, of bodybuilders. I was always shooting as well on these docs, these mini docs, not mini docs, these 1 hour docs.
Just west of Boston Harbor is a national historic treasure. The Cyclorama, home of the 6th annual Boston Tattoo Convention. Needle artists, devotees, and voyeurs of the ink have gathered to bear witness to the first ever tattoo war of the sexes. That's right, male versus female. Baltimore badass Seth Safari will go hand to hand against New York City daredevil doll Michelle Miles. Each artist will ink in the ever-popular American traditional style. Then, it's up to the public to decide who will be the next master or mistress of the tattoo universe and take home the trophy.
So that's Tattoo Wars. And now I'll show you the cold open for Motorcycle Women.
Six women. 3 from New York, 3 from California, met up in Durango, Colorado. They were united for one reason and one reason only: the freedom to ride. Mounting 5 hogs and 1 Vulcan, the journey would take them some 1,500 plus miles, down 2-lane blacktops, set against a backdrop of breathtaking earth and sky. Their destination, San Francisco, for the 2nd annual Girl Power Run, sponsored by the infamous Devil Dolls Motorcycle Club. Some of the women knew each other, others didn't, but through emails, phone calls, and word of mouth, their road trip came together. Be afraid, be very afraid.
So, kind of gives you an idea, a little of documentaries. These were docs and not reality. These were docs. These were filmed. The Motorcycle Women was a DP and me. We did not have a shot maker, a camera car following behind. It was me and the DP, and my DP got so lost in these 6 gorgeous gals that half the time I was like, where is he? And so I just whipped out I shot 50% of it. And it's on, we did not have, look, you make do. We didn't have fancy stuff. Didn't have a lot of money. This is back I filmed this in 2001 in the summer, and we shot it in 8 days, an 8-day road trip. And we spent money on a helicopter shot in Valley of the Gods, which is, this is incredible. But we had a lipstick cam that we put on a boom pole that you use for sound. And I because I'm small, I rode bitch on the back of one of the bikes and catapulted it over to get we were crazy. Wow. We were crazy. That's what you do when you make documentaries. You make films, you run and gun. Run and gun.
That's unreal.
Yeah. So those are just 3. And then I moved into, show running, and that was insanity. And I did it because I liked the paycheck. I could do it. I have left and right brain. I can manage and I can be creative. And And that's what I did. And I created the show Addicted that was in Northern California with Christina Wanzelak. I was embedded with drug addicts for 6 months, that was insane. The thing is, and I'm going to bring us back to documentaries and Raise Hell, and, you have a choice is, if you're going to work 18 hours a day, you better love what you do. And I would do that for Raise Hell, The Life and Times of Molly Ivins. I have a Holocaust education program. I would do that, but not on something that becomes thankless and, is not worth, the paycheck. So I think that everybody has a choice that they make. So I like real life, real stories, real people. I like making documentaries. And, I think that that's what motivated me. That's what I'm sharing with you. I've given you guys some ideas about how to find stories, what you should look at, what to do. I will talk about really, because I know we called it blurring the lines. And here's a quote: "Truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities. Truth isn't." Mark Twain said that.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very, very apt. And if you look at a lot of movies that have come out in recent years, if you look at, it's not even recent years, they've been borrowing, documentaries and features, narrative borrow from each other. The Times of Harvey Milk was made in 1984. Gus Van Sant made Milk in 2008, and he copied it right down to the shots that were made in, Rob Friedman's film in 1984, which both won, that won the Academy Award, and Milk won Sean Penn an Academy Award. Look at I, Tonya. How many of you have seen I, Tonya?
Oh, yeah.
The opening, you haven't? I'm going to show you.
Yeah, no, you know what? I only just saw that recently, and I went, all right, I'll just give it a go. And I was blown away. I was blown away.
The opening of the film is documentary style.
Yeah.
It is completely documentary style. It's actors, but it's documentary style. Totally, because they set it up that there are documentaries being made. What about Nomadland? Feels like it's a documentary. And in a way it is. She used real people. I look at those as hybrids. I like blurring the lines. I'm all about, why not? Who says that you have to stick to one? Yes, if you do cheesy recreations and it looks like shit, right. But don't, no. You see that stuff on different, certain media channels. That looks horrible. But for a little bit of money, you can do recreations, make them look evocative and beautiful. And it just depends on the story you're telling. Oliver Stone, the whole opening is documentary. He used archival footage of JFK. So there is a blurring of lines, but when you blur lines, and appropriation goes far beyond blurring lines, does it cross ethical lines? What about Borat? Are we crossing ethical lines with that? These are documentary filmmakers, you get into situations, how far will you go? Mm-hmm. And then of course, reality, as I like to say, reality, really? I did
really not.
I did some show running. That's why I had to stop. It's great. It's hugely popular. Okay. So look, what do you have today? You have my one of my babies who came up under me, Travis Shakespeare, was the showrunner. He created Life Below Zero. He's now a big executive. Life Below Zero, is it a reality show or is it a docu-series? It's a little bit of a hybrid. I think it's more of a docu-series. Yes, it's got a storyline of tracking these three people, but then then you have Tiger King. What is Tiger King? Oh, I know.
I didn't see it. I heard about all the reports
couldn't look
about
away.
it.
Was just like
you couldn't look away. That's what reality.
It's like a car wreck. It's
a train wreck.
Chain wreck. Sorry, I'm just thinking how much of this was staged and how much, and he was living up to, like he was.
So, but then, of course, and then there's mockumentaries. So that's why I said that there's blurring of lines, and I think that's okay. I mean, there's a lot of different people who make documentaries who say, like I say, how many it says that a documentary has to be, have talking heads, a voice of God narration, and archival footage. I certainly have done those documentaries, but documentaries are so much more, and I want to take some questions from you guys, but the last thing I'm going to say is documentaries are having a golden age. They're finally having their due, and it's totally fitting because they are about authenticity. Audiences have never been more hungry for that because we are bombarded with so much that is inauthentic. And
absolutely,
fake.
I agree. I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah.
They want to connect. It's that authentic, absolutely, and with real people, genuine, not embellished rubbish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and plus there's so much at stake around the world. There is so much at stake around the world, and people want, intuitively want that human connection to each other.
Absolutely.
Documentaries have the gift to awaken our shared humanity, and that is
I love that.
The most our shared humanity. We are, everything that's gone on in the past 4 years, the tribalism, and it's still going on. And we have such a reckoning here in America, but we have a shared humanity, We are a species, y'all. We are a species. And, sometimes I think we're the virus. We are a species and we have a shared humanity. We have one planet. And those of you, who want to go to Venus, good luck with that. So that's what this. So, yeah. So anybody have any questions? I'd love for you to ask me questions or engage or want to know. What else do you want to know? No, nobody has any questions.
I just want to thank you. Like I'm in a middle of a project at the moment. It's a passion project, and I'm also looking at another one. And I'm just so grateful that I came across this whole talk this evening, because you've just, it's nice to be reminded again and to get that, I can feel your passion in it, and that's why I do it, and sometimes it, gosh, it can just be tiring and you're like, I just got to keep going. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm just, you've inspired me all over again, and I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I there's times where I went down my wormhole, you get, when I was editing Molly and trying to figure out I'm going to tell you guys a story about structure. How do you tell a story, right? How do you tell a story? How do you find your story? So whenever I get a project and I start sifting through all my materials and I start, the thing is, you have to go through as you collect all your stuff, and you have to organize it, and you have to really know it. And I make select reels and string outs. And what are the themes of the story I'm telling? You have a basic story, you follow it, you track it. I was working on a project where the person had died. And so I was going to find out new stuff, but I knew the basics of Molly's story. So I always start with A, B, C, D, the chronological. That's always, And then the themes, and how am I going to lace the themes, in and out, speaking truth to power, populism, because Molly was a progressive populist, Texas, then and now, what the story of Molly, and I looked at it, of Raise Hell, was the A story, because you're tracking several stories when you're telling a feature. The A story is Molly, her story, her trajectory. The B story or is Texas. And you could say Molly is the protagonist and Texas is the antagonist. And also the protagonist. And then, of course, the C stories was what the stuff did and dribbled down to the people. That was what I originally first thought. And when in the first year, I did the first 8 interviews, and I kind of started piecing based on themes. And I have a huge amount of material that I did. I would mark up transcripts. I would highlight sections and what theme does that go in. And I would pull everything together and create string outs of each of these different themes and each of these different ideas and her early childhood, her parents, different things. And I would create a structure. I'd do a bullet point structure, and then I would take index cards and I put them up on a big bulletin board, a cork board over there. And it's color coded because I'm an editor and it's very anal, but it's a way for me to visually see it, to step away from the computer. And so I do that with all my structures. And excuse me. I had cut a funding cut and a sizzle cut to use first to raise money. And about 2 years into it, I had connections because I had been a showrunner to certain media companies, and I got right in to go and pitch to their nonfiction programming departments. And several people were really excited because they knew who Molly was. And everybody was super psyched. And what came back from the corporate power brokers was 2 out of 3 came back. It's a biopic and she's dead. So why should we care? And biopic dead. I got totally freaked out about that. And so did James, because we know the industry. And so for the next 2-3 years, I really twisted and turned in the wind about how to tell the story. And I did 45 plus interviews because I was trying to, anyway, getting ready to bring on an editor to help me. I'd kind of had an idea of where I wanted to go, but I even brought in a friend who's an amazing writer as a creative consultant. And we had so many versions. At one point we took Molly's 6 books and had the books as chapter titles, of acts, from her books. Anyway, I had Breakfast with the Great Kate Men, one of the greatest editors of all time. She did The Kindertransport and The Long Journey Home and 2 Academy Award winning films. And her credit list is extraordinary. And originally I wanted Kate to edit this film, and she kept saying, Janice, you're an editor, you should do it. But then she recommended me one of her mentees, which was Mo. And we were having breakfast, and I was talking about the structure. And she looked at me, and I had told her the story about, this is a biopic and she's dead. And she looked at me and she said, Janice, what is wrong with a biopic? And it was like, for 3 years, James and I and Carlisle had twisted, and particularly me, and a little click went off in my brain. And I looked at her and I said, nothing. And suddenly I was like released from my own self-imposed prison of trying to follow what is the nose of what you think somebody will fund, because somebody in who has position and money told you something, and you follow the whims of the industry. Never, ever, ever, ever do that. Follow your heart. So I got on a plane and I flew to New York or wherever on the East Coast. And as I was on the plane, I jotted down, I just poured out of me. I got out and I said, wow, that looks really familiar. I kid you not. I went back I take pictures of my structure boards. That was the first structure that I put up in 2012 to 2013, except for maybe 3 or 4 more things because I had gotten more information. So that is the film that has raised hell of a life in times of Molly Ivins. So first thought, best thought. Oh my God, somebody asked a question. Okay, I see there's things in the chat. Okay, here, good, let's see. What would you call the style of Raoul Peck's Exterminate All the Brutes? I haven't seen it, but I loved I Am Not Your Negro. That is, to me, one of the most spectacular documentaries ever made. I Am Not Your Negro is brilliant, but I have not seen Exterminate All the Brutes. What is that? I haven't seen it. I'm not familiar with it. Who asked the question? Claire. I haven't seen it. But I loved I Am Not Your Negro. It is for me, it is I Am Not Your Negro is what I would call a poetic document. It's a poetic performative documentary because it's got Samuel L. Jackson doing James Baldwin being his voice. But the image is very performative. It's very beautiful. It's very poetically visual and evocative.
I agree. I agree completely. I think I'm Not Your Negro is fabulous. And the current one that is a 4-part series is quite a different style. And that's why I was wondering.
Oh, great.
It is including, it's archival, and it is acted, and it is graphics, and well, lots of, I don't know, maybe someone else has seen it. I've only seen part of the first one. But it's such a different style. That's why I was asking.
Wow. What's it on? Where are you watching?
I have to go.
I'll look it up. Don't worry about it. Exterminate.
Prime or Netflix. I can check. Exterminate all
the brutes.
What, is that what I?
Yeah, exterminate all the brutes. And it sounds like it's he blurred the lines that he's mixing. He's mixing.
Exactly.
See, I love all my films that I've made. I've always brought in, I've used Super 8, I've used 16 millimeter, I've used old video. I love mixing. I love blurring lines. Why use whatever you can. Gives it so much more texture. Okay, how do you feel about documentaries where the camera, this is from Celeste Hoffman. How do you feel about the documentary where the camera is often shaky and it hurts the eyes for the viewer to see, like Grace Jones and Mary J. Blige documentaries, excellent stories, but footage is dizzying and difficult to enjoy. So I think, you know what? I think it's who's their target audience? It's that frantic thing. Look at the idea of cinema verite, handheld. I've shot some of what you just watched with the cold open of Motorcycle Women was handheld, but you can do it in a way. Yeah, some people overdo it. They do it to make it feel like it's more immediate. But I think if it's too much of it, I agree. It can be nauseating. That's the choice of the director. I like handheld. I mean, look, that style, handheld, in the moment, following, as I call run and gun, which I did the whole series of Addicted like that, was done run and gun pretty much. Has been appropriated. Look at The Office. Look at a lot of TV shows, lots of procedurals. It's all like you're watching a doc, it's a documentary. That's stock style shooting. So they appropriate. Celeste, hi. Yeah, I mean, it can be. I haven't seen the Grace Jones and the Mary J. Blige, but I know that who's the target audience are the younger generation, and you may be of that generation. Maybe they love it. They're used to it. I had a student today tell me they're learning how to edit, and he's going to do a music montage using EDM. Like, he loves that. He thinks it's for all genres. And I said, EDM, really? I said, there's no nuance to it. I said, I get it. It keeps a nice fast pace, but if you're telling a story you want nuance, EDM is just, it stays all at one level. There's no build. And then, so I gave him a link to an Enaudi cue. I said, I know. I said, this is a man who composes cinematic masterpieces. Feel the nuance in this. It's not EDM. But, younger generations are used to what they don't know. They haven't, they get used to one thing, and they're used to shaky. Look at TikTok videos, shaky. Some of them are great. I mean, that guy on the skateboard who did Stevie Nicks went viral, millions of people. What a great moment. Made us all feel good during the pandemic because it was his joy, That's documentary. In the moment. That's documentary. He's documenting himself having a great ride to the Stevie Nicks song. Why do they do documentaries? Okay, in this overly realistic way. You have to ask the director who did that. I just think they want the audience to connect. They want you to feel like you're right there. You're right here. You're right there. I know, it can drive me crazy too. I'm wondering, how do you go about finding inspiration for making a documentary as a film student, as people can be slightly reluctant to be, that's a great question, to be part of your project, budgetary issues, not enough connections, etc. Well, you're my perfect, that's the first part of my talk was what I teach my students. How curious are you, and how curious are you and how curious are you and how passionate are you? You have to sell yourself. But you have to be honest about it. Like, why do you want to tell that story? And you have to just be honest, be truthful. Why do you want to tell that story? And reach out. Look, if you don't ask, you're never going to know. If you don't ask people, if you don't reach out, I'm always so surprised, you build up all this fear. Sometimes people are really flattered. They're really blown away. Some people are reluctant. Then you keep trying. You keep trying. You keep trying. Or you meet somebody who knows somebody else who opens the door for you. But you get out of your own way. Get out of your head. It never hurts to ask. And I've had those moments where I've been petrified to ask. Hey, we tried to get, look, I got, Rachel Maddow is in my film. We thought, oh, well, she's not going to say it. She's in my film. She loved Molly. We asked, she said yes, as soon as she heard, and she saw my sizzle. I'm in. She gave me said we only have a half an hour. I had to submit 10 questions. She sat with me for almost an hour and she answered more, and it was fantastic. Have you guys seen the film? Have you seen Raise Hell, the Life and Times of Molly Ivins? Oh, let me show you the trailer. Let me wet your palate. I'll do that. Let me show you the trailer. Of course, I can do that. I have it right here. I called it up to do that. Okay, here we go.
All right, I have come to cheer y'all up about the state of politics in this great nation. I know you think that it is looking dark and gloomy. Cheer up, it could always be worse. You could be living in Texas.
I bring to you our own Molly Ivins.
Molly Ivins appeared in papers all over the country.
How many legendary print journalists are there?
I'm a Texan. I drive a pickup truck. I drink beer. I hunt. I'm a liberal. So what?
Molly came in like a house afire, making riotous fun of the legislature.
Representative so-and-so has the IQ of an adolescent pissant. I see him in the Capitol the next day and they say, baby, you put my name in your paper. I accidentally became an authority on George W. Bush. Like the guy who climbed Everest, it was there.
The people who Molly took apart were the right people to aim at, and they knew it.
What's your take on the draft-dodging, dope-smoking, deadbeat dad who divorced his dying wife?
Molly could be very rough on progressives.
In my opinion, the Democratic leadership is gutless to an extraordinary extent. I had been asked to join the New York Times.
They wanted Molly for the unique voice, the iconoclast, but they wanted her to fit into the times. As we say in Texas, that dog don't hunt.
Damn, it's good to be back home again. One can make a difference in Texas. What the hell they need with one more liberal in Berkeley, California, for God's sake. Texas has always been the national laboratory for bad government.
Major daily publications were buying her column and not running it.
You bet there's censorship. Anytime you do the kind of work Molly did, there's a price to pay for it.
Molly got death threats, threatening letters.
I think of you as a hateful, lying left liberal.
Keep pretending that the political spectrum runs from right to left. It doesn't. It runs from top to bottom. It's not those people in Washington. It's not those people in your state capital. This country is run by us.
Somebody has got to look them in the eye and speak truth. And she did.
Magnolia Pictures. There you go. That's the trailer to Raise Hell, the Life and Times of Molly Ivins, which is streaming on Hulu. It's Jump the Pond, and it premiered in the UK and Ireland in the lead up to our election on October 23rd, 2020. Even under pandemic, and we got a whole other audience who didn't know. The Brits loved her. I got a request from people how can we get it to Australia and New Zealand? We just signed an option for the doc to make it into a narrative, just like they did for RBG and like they did for Mr. Rogers. So we'll see what happens. But the fact is, Molly has legs. It came out on her 75th birthday in the great state, and then 2 weeks later it went to New York and LA, and then it stayed in theaters for 18 weeks from Alabama to Alaska. That's extraordinary for an independent.
So that was independent, yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
We made it.
That's
we made
unreal.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a character. She's just like fascinating, isn't it? What a character. And if you can find that character that can represent, so, you know, saying it, she's saying things for people might not say, you know?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a character. And you stuck with 7 years?
Yes, so 6.5. I found out
6.5,
we were in Sundance. Here's the thing. We found out we were in Sundance November 18th. I was rough cut, not even going towards fine cut. We locked picture. I found out I was in Sundance on November 18th. 3 days later, I got a call from Janet Pearson. She wanted us in South by Southwest. She wanted the premiere, but we had just literally that morning signed Sundance. I mean, world premiere Sundance. So she made it the Texas premiere. And she said, we do that with a few films where we take, ones that have premiered elsewhere. And we were one of those. And oh my God, Molly's Stomping Grounds, South by Southwest. That screening on it was at the big theater on the main drag, Congress Avenue, going up to the Capitol in Austin. And the screening was at 11:30 in the morning. It was like a 1,000-seat theater, was completely filled. And for many people, they had not seen each other. I had interviewed a lot of them. Once Molly's posse, their door opened to me, and it was palpable. She was in the room. You could feel it. People, because some of them hadn't seen each other since she had passed away in 2007. This brought them all together. It was huge. Cecile Richards, she's in the film. The late Governor Ann Richards' daughter, and the former president of Planned Parenthood, she introed the film at South by Southwest. So I found out that I'm in these two film festivals on November 18th. I locked picture on December 17th, and we had to get a DCP, which is the master that you give for film festivals, to Sundance by January 22nd. And we had over 1,400 clips that we had to replace, and get clear. It was insane. It was insanity. There's over 1,400 archival clips.
Gosh.
Yeah.
How did you do that? How did you do that?
I have my clip goddess and my producing partner, boots on the ground for everything else I do, is Amber Howell. She's a genius, and we have a Holocaust education program we created together called What We Carry, and she is a dog with a bone. She's amazing. We're both the most anal people in the world. That's why she's like the person who I love making films with. We both wear those hats, and she was incredible. I mean, everybody was in this. We were a tiny but mighty team. Very, very small.
It's the best.
Yeah. And we had so much support, so many donations, so many people came forward.
So you got that community, the Molly community. There were people that's actually really clever, knowing that she's already got it. There's an audience there. And
that's why always, every project, who's your target audience? How are you going to raise money? Who's your target audience? You have to start.
Have they already got a following, or?
You've got, and how are you going to start marketing it? I mean,
how did you get to them? How did you, just bit by bit?
Facebook. We put up a Facebook page, and you have to think about Molly's target audience. They're not Instagrammers, they're Facebook or Twitter, but mostly Facebook. And once we tapped in with her posse and her community, it opened. Word started spreading. People have been waiting for a documentary on Molly Ivins for years. Why hadn't it been done soon? When people saw it, they said, wow. A lot of people didn't know who she was.
Yeah.
Now they do. And you can stream it on Hulu. It's on Hulu. It's on other platforms. You can rent it, but you can stream it on Hulu. And
right.
Yeah. When we found out,
what was that organization that you're running? The Holocaust, what was it?
It's called What We Carry.
What We Carry. Okay.
Yeah, those videos. I had a website for it that came down because I haven't had time because I have to redo that website, my own website. But What We Carries, it's through the United Jewish Federation of Tidewater. Some of them are on YouTube. What We Carry. Cool.
Yeah.
It's stories of survivors when they were no longer able to. Yeah, because their speakers bureaus were stopping. The other thing I was going to say was that when Raise Hell, we found out we were in Sundance and South by on November 18th, and we had to have it in Sundance by January 24th or something. We only had $12,000 in the bank. That's the other thing too. And in the course of like 3 days, we had 2 people, our angel investors, who came forward and basically ponied up major bucks, major, and then family foundations, like, yeah, when you look at it, you'll see they're executive producers. You'll see who they are. But I mean, well, Katie Bettner, Texan, and her husband Paul, Katie Bettner, and yeah.
And how did you get, like, you know, were there any issues with SAG, like, you know, any of the people that were themselves that you interviewed, were any of the members of SAG, like, is there issues, like, you know, around that?
Well, I interviewed Kathleen Turner.
Yeah.
I interviewed Kathleen, and she didn't make the cut. She was in my cut all the way up to the rough cut. And we did a script. No, I mean, people waive, no, people, documentaries generally don't pay unless they're going to do voiceover or something like that.
Exactly.
No, Kathleen gave us her time, and they're not acting. They're talking about real life. Kathleen was fantastic. She ended up not making the cut. And I was in New York for 51 Fest, which is Tina Browne. She had this symposium and she did this 51 Fest. It was the first ever Women in the World thing that she had done for years, and they changed it to 51 Fest to have films. And we were the only documentary. And I asked Kathleen if she would do a Q&A with me, and she said, sure. And she hadn't seen the film. And we were in the green room, and I was with Molly, the person who was Molly's manager, Dan Green, and I had interviewed him too. And I had to tell Kathleen she didn't make the cut. And so we're in the green room, and Dan was sitting there, and I said, Kathleen, I need to tell you something. And she said, what is that? What is that, dear? And I said, you didn't make the cut. She said, I'm on the cutting room floor. I said, yes, you are. And then Dan was sitting right there, but I said, but so is he. And I, and she knew, and they both giggled. And I said, she said it was, and then she leaned in, she said it wasn't relevant, right? I said, no, I said, exactly. I said, if I had put in something about the play, it would have been relevant. And she totally got it. And then she leaned over and she said, thank you for letting me know, because she had her daughter there. And I didn't want her to be surprised. That's, as a documentary filmmaker, I took responsibility. It was truth. And she, she's a big movie star and actress. And she doesn't probably like movie star. She's an actress. She's a great actress. She's in Kaminsky Method right now. She's amazing. So, yeah.
Janice, thank you so much for this. This was amazing. We're just about out of time.
Okay.
I appreciate, we could talk to you all night and listen to your stories. And everything you have to share and teach us. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us. And we hope you come back next month for our next Arts and Lecture series. And if you feel so inclined, you could donate on our website, and we can keep these free for as long as we can go. So thank you so much again, Janice.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And you guys, you've been really great. I am sitting here with a foot in the cast. So that's why I've been kind of restless and moving around, because I have to kind of put it up. But you guys have been great. Yeah. So I'm one-legged right now.
Thank you. That was amazing. That was so good. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
I get a lot from you all. Thank you. And thanks to those who jumped in and participated, because I do like a back and forth. It's much more interesting than just lecturing at people.
Cool. So what's next?
What's next? I'm clearing my plate. I had a few things. I'm clearing my plate. I was offered a couple of narrative things. I'm clearing my plate to make room to see what's going to bubble up. I'm allowing the space to see what I really must do. And it has something to do with our shared humanity. That I know.
Sorry, something to do with?
Our shared humanity. It's a big theme, but that's been in my mind for the past 4 or 5 years, and it's gotten stronger and stronger and stronger.
Is it like that tapping in the back of the mind, right? It's
in everything. It's things I write. It's in everything. When I speak to my students, when I speak to you guys, we have a shared humanity. I don't know what form it's going to take, but that's.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right.
Everybody have
All
a
the
great
best.
weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye. Raise hell, y'all.